Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day you are watching our podcast series, you're very welcome. So our Business Owner Spotlight series allows us to talk to business owners across the country to get to know them a little bit more, to get to know their businesses, their opportunities and some challenges, and just generally find out the way they're doing business. So I'm delighted to welcome Frank this morning. So Frank Murphy is someone who I worked with in the past, actually. So our paths have crossed again. And Frank is going to talk to you about Grayscout, very interesting new company, startup company that's just starting. So I'm going to pass you over to Frank. Good morning. How are you?
Very good, Des. Good to talk to you.
Tell us a little bit about Grayscout. Tell us a little bit about yourself first and Grayscout.
Okay, well, for my sins, I'm an accountant. For those that don't know me, worked in the retail trade most of my life with Super Quinn and Fergal Quinn and the whole Quinn family. When they sold the business, I stayed with it for a while, but eventually decided, look, I really wanted to strike out on my own, do some consultancy work, which means that I've seen into a lot of different types of businesses, working as hard, but enjoying it more. So a step that maybe I should have taken a long time before that. Grayscout is just one of the more recent companies that I've got involved in. Basically, a fellow called John Killian had developed this software, didn't know what to do with it, didn't know how to move it forward. So basically, we got in touch with Enterprise Ireland and we put a proposal to them where they might invest. We'd already been involved in the LEO, the local enterprise offices, in terms of getting support for recruitment and things like that. And to be fair, they were very, very helpful. The company's based in AIT in Athlone, and the local enterprise office there have been great. They effectively said, look, you've outgrown us, pushed us up to Enterprise Ireland, and we are now part of the Enterprise Ireland HPSU fund. They invested 300,000 in the company in our first funding round out of $1 million. And we have a number of other companies who've invested as well, venture capital and people like that. So what is Grayscout? We all know what is happening online in terms of e-commerce. It was big before COVID, it's now exploded, and it's going to get even bigger. I wouldn't fancy a business that's focused entirely on physical premises at this point in time. You have to be online, you have no choice. And it doesn't matter what your product is. The problem is, as e-commerce grows, so do also the fraudsters and their opportunities. So Grayscout is designed to detect counterfeit products online, detect grey market activity, and a whole lot of other fraudulent non-authorized activities. So I can give you an example on Samsung because we're authorized to talk about them. Samsung, we did an experiment or a trial for 3 months to incorporate Black Friday, last Christmas, and the month of January. So it was a 3-month trial. We were given a brief to identify anybody selling mobile phones in the Irish market only. They weren't interested in the UK or anywhere else in Europe. They just confined us to that. And they also confined us to a number of marketplaces, so Amazon or eBay, whatever it happened to be. Okay. So we identified a phenomenal number of operators, for want of a better description, who were selling or offering Samsung mobile phones in Ireland. Very, very few of them were authorized. Very few of them were legitimate. Now, I'm not saying they were all counterfeit phones, they weren't, but they were grey market phones. People buying them in one market and selling them in another market, which damages the brand for Samsung, because some of them were of questionable origin. Some of them weren't even new, they were reconditioned. That meant that warranties and everything else were going to go up in smoke. And the problem is, if you get a bad phone with the Samsung brand on it, you've connected that in your mind to Samsung. And Samsung were even faced with a situation where somebody was saying, I bought this new phone online, it doesn't work, I want it replaced. So now they were going to have to bear the cost. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that we identified a huge number of these guys. 25% of them, because of the fact that we'd found them, volunteered to exit the Irish market. And the reason they did that was that we had authority right back from Samsung in Korea to represent them we didn't speak to them, we communicated with each one of these companies and we said, prove to us where you got the product, what your sourcing is, your logistics and everything else, and we want copies of the invoices. So that 25% realized the game was up, so they just exited. They're still trading in the UK, and that's the next stage for our operation with Samsung. Yeah. And of the remainder, 89%, we had them delisted and removed from view within 30 days. And that's what we do. Anybody who's not authorized to sell the product, we can have them removed.
It's an amazing piece of technology and a great addition to a market which I suppose can be difficult to trust it at the best of times, because you're not 100% sure where the product has come from.
That's it. There are other companies who offer a similar service, but a lot of them are manual. A lot of them are legal firms trying to do it the long, slow way of doing test purchases, taking the guys to court. That can take 2 years, and it's a hell of a lot more expensive than we think we could charge. But to give you an idea of the scale of counterfeiting, Statista, one of these research companies, looked at 2019 figures. So that's pre-COVID and pre a lot of other things. And they reckon that the counterfeit market, not even grey market, is worth 450 billion a year.
Wow, billion.
Billion. That's bigger than Ireland's GDP. It's bigger than Israel's GDP. It's bigger than Portugal's GDP. So, and these guys are making a fortune. And it's bad when it's mobile phones, but Panorama did a program there last year and showed that people are buying branded drugs online, and they're not coming from the legitimate manufacturers. They're coming out of some backstreet laboratory in India or God knows where. 16 people died from a single drug last year coming in through the post. And the customs people can't detect them all. They'll get a small fraction. In fact, even the papers today in Ireland, they found a whole load of drugs and they reckon themselves as less than 1% of what's coming into the country.
It's mad, isn't it?
We have the technology to detect and stop.
So you mentioned COVID there. What was the biggest impact on the business when COVID hit?
Well, we're a new company. We're only starting on the wholesale side of it at the moment. One of the things we found with COVID is that most companies retrenched. I mean, the immediate instinct for most people, if your revenues are under threat, you start cutting costs. And the idea of taking on a new service was just totally alien for most of them. So, I mean, fair credit to Samsung and a few other companies that did agree to work with this. Not only did it work, but we were able to demonstrate very, very significant return on investment. In fact, we promised Samsung a 10% return on investment. We give them a multiple of that 10%, in fact, a fairly high multiple. And that was even taking a very, very low margin because of their own internal accounting systems.
Right.
So, as I say, most companies retrenched and just decided, no, we're not spending any money on anything, despite the fact that we were giving them this undertaking. Having said that, they have loosened an awful lot since.
So tell me, where do you see growth then coming for the business in the next 6 months, Frank?
Growth is, as far as we're concerned, we're a worldwide targeting company. Our very first customer was in Japan. Our second customer was in China. Our third one was here in Ireland. We don't care where they are. We don't need to meet them face to face. Between Zoom and everything else, we can talk to them anyway. So we have had conversations with people just about anywhere in the world you care to mention. We're also fortunate that Ireland is a fantastic base because so many international companies are got serious headquarters here, or at least serious branches. So if you're ever starting a business, start it in Ireland for that reason alone.
So your product, so you've got a product so if you have got a product or a brand and you want to protect it online so people can't illegally sell it, Grey Scout is a technology which will support them in protecting how and who's reselling for them.
Yeah, basically, again, going back to Samsung, and I'm sorry for referring to them the whole time.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great brand. It's a great example.
So we were able to use the software to identify anybody offering Samsung mobile phones in the marketplace. The second stage then was to effectively confirm that we're authorized or not authorized, as the case may be. And there's a whole process in that, and again, it's automated. The third stage on it is we allow the client, in this case Samsung, to review our findings, because there are companies there that they may say, look, We know that guy's a problem, but he's still a very worthwhile customer in a whole lot of other areas. Don't do anything with him for the moment. But all of these guys, do what you can. And then we have an automated process that effectively removes them from view, and that's the expression we use. So we go to Amazon, eBay, whatever marketplace it is, and we have a process with them which basically says, this fill is not authorized, please remove them. And they follow that up. Generally, they act within 2 to 3 days. So it's a fairly fast process.
Very good, yeah, very quick, yeah.
However, you have to, if you think of that game, whack-a-mole, or it's like a virus. You kill off a fella with one brand, he just starts off under a different heading tomorrow. So it's a continuous process. It's not something that's a one-time fix-all. But having said that, you break the back of it in the first period, and after that you're into a maintenance environment. But it's important to do that, because otherwise they just come back out of the woodwork again.
Excellent. So final question for you, really, and it's not as much about the business. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self, Frank? You've had a few years to think about it, so all right. What advice would you give to the 18-year-old?
I think the biggest one I'd say is confidence. You've heard that expression before, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. I'm absolutely a firm believer in that. Okay, you're going to fail at something, but use it as a learning experience. There's no such thing as a wasted opportunity. And the other side of it is, if you look at Grey Scout, it's such a simple concept. It's not simple in terms of its programming environment, but it came about because somebody said, there's an awful lot of counterfeit products online. Every good business opportunity comes from day-to-day environment. So it's a matter of going back to my 18-year-old self, open your eyes, have a good look around, and you'll find opportunities.
Yeah.
And I suppose the last one, going back to what I said earlier, Ireland is a fantastic place to start a business. We've got a low tax regime for corporates, but there's phenomenal supports between the local enterprise office, Enterprise Ireland. There's a very dynamic VC environment out there, the research and development tax credits, you name it, innovation grants. There's massive supports if you look for them and find them and get in there. And again, I know I keep harping on about Enterprise Ireland. They do a phenomenal job.
Absolutely, 100%. But I think a lot of business owners find them so busy working in the business that they tend not to research it enough. And there are supports, as you say, there's grants available. There is, there's just so many supports available. Get out there and start looking for them.
I'm a firm believer of taking time out of the business from time to time and having a look from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've worked with people, you walk into their office and they're sitting there staring into space. And there was one guy in particular, you'll remember him as Vincent. And I always thought he was at his most dangerous when he was like that, because his brain was working overtime and he came up with outstanding ideas.
Yeah, amazing, yeah.
And it caused me to think afterwards, take a break, come back out of the business and look at it from a customer's point of view or from a bird's eye point of view. You sometimes learn a lot,
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, it's been great talking to you. It's great to kind of reminisce there around our Super Quinn days and some of the, I suppose, the people who shaped our lives and directed us. Loved the summary there around, about confidence and having belief and not being afraid to fail. There are opportunities everywhere, and it is a question of opening the eyes, seeing what's available,
absolutely,
and taking a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Frank, have a super weekend, and very best of luck in the future.